Hello everyone, I'm Brian and welcome back. Alright, let's go ahead and continue on.
Every day, Swamiji, we go through this experience, waking, dreaming, deep sleep, right?
Yeah.
So, we understand waking. This is waking.
Unless somebody is dozed off.
Yeah, unless somebody...
Always a problem with
Hopefully,
Vedanta.
everybody's in the waking state right now. Okay, then the dream state we also experience every night.
Yes.
And deep sleep we also experience every night. But in deep sleep, there is awareness, right? Not conscious experience, but awareness.
He has touched upon a very important subject. If you are saying that you are awareness, I am awareness, and this is constant, body changes, mind changes, then somebody might ask, what about deep sleep? What about the stages we call unconscious or under anesthesia? There's no awareness, there's no consciousness there. So where is this pure consciousness Vedanta talks about? Vedanta insists there is consciousness there. And that's where you begin to understand what Vedanta means by consciousness. See, a fundamental difference has to be understood here in concepts. Normally, in ordinary discourse, especially here in the West, we take the mind to be consciousness. So hearing, smelling, touching, talking, thinking, desiring, willing, remembering, this is called consciousness. But what Vedanta says is, this is consciousness plus the activity of the mind. So all the changes that you see are the mind, but consciousness is not the mind. It reveals the activity of the mind.
I think I get it. So basically, it's like, let me try to see if I understand it based on just what he said so far. So basically, the consciousness is always there, but because your mind is in a sense turned off, you don't have memory, but the consciousness has always been there. That's as far as I got so far.
And when the mind shuts down in deep sleep, the blankness, that nothingness that you experience in deep sleep, it's still an experience. I put it this way.
Because when you wake up and you say, like, did you sleep? And you say, yeah. For how long? 6 hours? Well, how do you know you slept for 6 hours? Maybe, wait.
Deep sleep is not an absence of experience. It is an experience of absence.
There you go. Yeah, because I mean, there's a 6 hour period where you maybe don't remember your dreams or anything, but there's a 6 hour period like, well, I mean, clearly it's experienced, but you just don't remember it.
So that's what Vedanta. Experience comes when consciousness has an object. In deep sleep, consciousness has no object because the world is not revealed. Body has shut down. I mean, body is not. You're not using the body to experience the world. The mind is shut down. There are no dreams.
So basically, it is consciousness? Is awareness without experience.
So because there are no objects, it seems to be nothing. But you do wake up, and then you do say, I slept like a log. I didn't know anything.
I slept like a baby.
I slept like a baby. This phrase is there, this similar phrases are there in every language, showing that it's a common experience across all of humanity. So that means it's an experience. It's not nothing. So there is consciousness in deep sleep. That's what, in fact, a recent book which talks about the phenomenon of that consciousness is there in deep sleep. It's called Waking, Dreaming, Being, yes, by Evan Thompson, who's a philosopher in the University of British Columbia. He says that even in deep sleep you have to admit consciousness, and he makes an interesting comment at the very beginning. He says that consciousness studies didn't begin 25 years ago. It began with the Upanishads 5,000 years ago. And he makes a tremendous statement. He says we should not date our history from AD and BC. We should date history from before Upanishads and after Upanishads. They are so important. Yes, a tremendous assertion he makes.
Let's talk about deep sleep and the relationship. Is deep sleep a kind of a clue, a window to what we call death?
Death. Okay.
Because,
now we are moving into grim subjects.
When we go into, in India, when they do a cremation or frequently Bhagavad Gita is quoted.
Chanted, yeah.
And Lord Krishna says, the real you is not subject to birth or death. Water cannot wet it, wind cannot dry it, weapons cannot shatter it, fire cannot burn it, it's ancient, weapons cannot cleave it. It's unborn, it's not subject to death.
Right.
And many Swamis like yourself, when they say what happens to you after death, their answer is, I was never born, which is very confusing to people. But what is the connection between, say, waking, dreaming, sleeping, and Turiya and death?
That is, I mean, I get the I was never born. That is actually interesting. Whenever he said that, for some odd reason, in my mind, a question was asked, then what's the point of birth? Which I think I've heard or seen somewhere that the point of birth is, at least one point, is the fact that this is all a play, all Maya. This is all a play. I also heard maybe somewhere that it is a way for us to reach a higher level, and every time you are reborn, you get another chance to elevate yourself. That's what I remember, and that's what I think whenever that question came up for some odd reason, yet I've answered it. Is my answers right or wrong?
All right. You've used the term Turiya, which is a common term in Vedanta. It literally means the fourth. What do you mean by the fourth? Vedanta looks at it this way. There are different procedures, methodologies, if you will, for discovering ourselves as pure consciousness. And anybody can try them out. One of the methodologies is to use our common experience of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep to come to an intuition of ourselves as the witness consciousness of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. When you are identified with this person, this waking person, you are called the waker. Call it the first. When you are identified with the person you are in the dream, you're not aware that you're dreaming. It's a dream which you realize later, but you were there in the dream as a person. That person is we call it the dreamer. Then deep sleep, that consciousness associated with deep sleep, when you wake up and say, I slept like a baby, call it the third, the deep sleeper. So you have the waker, the dreamer, and the deep sleeper. And these are the three which we are used to. We think of ourselves as, this is our experience. And what Vedanta teaches us, the insight, crucial insight of Vedanta is, you are not the first, the waker, not the second, the sleeper, the dreamer, not the third, the deep sleeper, but what it calls the fourth, the consciousness in which all of these are appearing and disappearing. So the consciousness is apart from these three and yet underlying all of these three. That fourth is called Turiya.
And that is not subject to birth, death.
That is not subject to birth and death. What is subject to birth and death? The body. What is subject to change? The mind. But the Turiya itself is the witness of the birth and the death of the body, birth and the aging and the decay and the death of the body. It itself is not born with the birth of the body. It itself does not age with the aging of the body. It itself does not die with the dying of the body. And the changes of the mind, Turiya itself reveals the changes of the mind. The Mandukya Upanishad, which is a classic text of Advaita Vedanta, it says that you are the Turiya. You are not the waker, dreamer, or deep sleeper. And the whole point is to realize yourself as the Turiya. And it's not really the fourth. Really, when you come to an understanding of it, it is the one which appears as the three.
Correct. Yeah. So now, we earlier in the room there, we both were talking about Wittgenstein, the German philosopher. And Wittgenstein said in one of his writings, our life is a dream, we are asleep, but once in a while we wake up enough to know that we are dreaming. So by tonight, whatever happened today will be a dream. Your childhood is now a dream. What happened 5 minutes ago is a dream. What happens to my words by they reach you, they're gone. So actually this right now
It's a
in
dream.
a sense, is a waking dream because it's ungraspable, right? 1 minute ago is ungraspable. And so this is a waking dream.
And that's what I said, I believe, in an Eckhart video. It's like, we can never experience now. I mean, someone else cannot experience it now because because everything, how you see me is because of the light reflecting off me, which is then being recorded by the webcam. And that by the time the light reflects off me and gets to the webcam, that's already a distance, a time travel, so that's already in the past. By the time the webcam recognizes it, that's the past. By the time, like, even if we're meeting in person, what you're seeing is the past, because light has to reflect off me, and then your eyes has to catch that light to see my reflection, and your brain has to process that. So basically, the second that you know I'm there, I'm already in the past, even though I'm still there. That's kind of wild when you think about it.
What we might say a lucid now. And the reason I'm bringing this to our attention right now is this waking dream is frequently referred to as Maya, right? Because it's a projection of consciousness. But anyway, how does this all help us? How does this help us alleviate our existential suffering? What has this to do with the 5 kleshas that the Vedanta talks about?
Yeah. Before I get to that, I know when Deepak says this is all a dream, I would see some skeptical faces. He'd say, no, this is real, and the dreams are dreams, and this is real. But look at it this way. If you imagine something, eating a cookie, you'd say that's an imagination, it's not real. And if I eat a cookie, that's real. But now do this. Imagine eating a cookie and also remember that a cookie which you ate maybe 1 day ago or 2 days ago, the memory of eating a cookie and the imagination of eating a cookie, they seem very similar because both are in the mind and mental. And what Deepak says is this very thing which seems very real now is going to become a memory every fleeting second. It's retreating into memory. When you compare that memory with a fantasy.
When we came into this room, that's
exactly.
a memory, right?
Right now, if you imagine us walking into this room, it's memory. How is that different from the memory of a dream? Every fleeting moment which we call real is quickly, at tremendous speed, disappearing into a dream-like memory. You would still argue, no, but this particular moment feels very real. And Vedanta agrees with you. This present moment feels very real because you are here.
I'm sorry, I thought of something really dumb, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. So, I do wonder if I ever go up to the Swami and ask him, so what you're saying is, if I go up to someone and slap him in the face, and it's like, hey, that was a dream. and what's the difference at that point? I wonder what Swami would say for that. Because, I mean, while that is now officially in the past, it is memory, it's no longer real at this moment. It in fact happened, and a dream is not what actually happens, but it can be considered memory. So dream is a memory, and anything that happens in the waker world is a memory. So waker world and dream world, the dreamer and the waker, all goes into memory. But what happens in the dream does not happen in the waker world. And because of how, at least some societies see it, that the waker world is the real world. So therefore, they don't care what happens in the dream world. The only thing they care about is what happened in the waker world. So that's the difference. I'm curious what he will say to that. Could I get away with slapping someone in the face, say, hey, that was just a dream, it was a memory. Don't think that actually happened. Being stupid there, I'm being stupid there. But what do you think about that?
You are reality. This moment borrows its reality from you. See, wherever you are, that feels real to you. Mm-hmm. Imagine, even in your dreams, when you are actually in a dream, you don't know it's a dream, it feels very real. It feels very real at that time. It's because of the presence of consciousness at that present moment which lends reality to it.
So the only continuity in any experience is that which
I.
you say I. When you say where are you? You say, I'm here, right? But if you go inside the body, there's no one there because this body is in I, being experienced in I. Mind is being experienced in I. That I is the only invariant in every dreamlike experience.
Absolutely.
It's the only constant.
Absolutely.
When you were a baby,
Yes.
when you were a teenager, different body, different mind. But the invariant is that luminous consciousness
Right.
that brings that experience, the light of awareness that brings that experience
Right.
to what we call reality.
I'll make a small distinction here. When you say I, that I is not the ego.
Yes,
Yeah. It's the, I would call it the witness of the ego.
the witness.
Yeah, the ego comes and goes. So when you are deeply absorbed in something, playing a game of tennis or something like that, or immersed in a beautiful musical experience, you lose sense of self. So you'll see, has the I gone there? The ego is not apparent there. But consciousness, that's always there. Otherwise, you wouldn't have that experience at all. So that's what he means by the luminous I. But going back to the very important question which Deepak asked, what good is all of this? What's the point of all of this? The point is, it's the most important thing in our lives. The whole point of this, and of all of Indian philosophies, the different schools, it doesn't have to be Advaita Vedanta, it could be Buddhism, it could be Nyaya, Sankhya. The whole point is overcoming suffering and attainment of true, lasting peace and happiness. How does that work? Think about it. Where is suffering? There is suffering in the world, suffering of the body, suffering of the mind. But that consciousness which reveals the body, mind, and the world, does it suffer in itself? You will see no. I'll tell you a very funny story. This person who goes up to a Swami in the Himalayas and asks, Swami, I'm in great suffering. I'm suffering. I'm miserable. Help me. And the Swami says, are you aware of your misery? He says, yes, of course. That's why I've come here. I'm unhappy. I'm deeply aware of my unhappiness. That's why I've come to you. And Swami says, if you are aware of your unhappiness, of your misery, then that misery is an object, and you are the consciousness aware of that object. You are aware of that object means you cannot be that object. You are aware of unhappiness means you cannot be unhappy. You are aware of unhappiness in the mind. Think about it. The funny thing is, it works like this. The person goes and thinks about it. And if you do that, you will see a certain distance opens up between you as the experiencer and the experienced unhappiness. And he comes back and says that, you're right. I am not unhappy. I'm experiencing an unhappiness in the mind, and I'm so peaceful now. And the Swami scolds him immediately. No, you are not peaceful. You are the witness of the peace in your mind.
Oh.
And that's important, because the moment he distances himself from his unhappiness and he thinks, I'm at peace, you're trapped again, because that's the peace in the mind. And the mind is changeable. It will change into unhappiness again. You think, I was very happy at the Rubin Museum, but now I have stepped out into Times Square, I'm unhappy. No, both of them are appearances and disappearances in the mind.
Wow, okay. That is, I never thought about it that way. I mean, clearly I know that you separate yourself from emotion. Generally speaking, a lot of them always say the reason for these is to separate yourself from suffering. Separation from suffering. But it's not necessarily separation from, like, the good things. Like peace. Like he was talking about. You don't want to separate yourself from peace. This is a good thing. But then he said, wait, you separate yourself from peace because peace is also the same thing. It's an emotional reaction. Calm, peace, all of this is an emotion. Suffering is an emotion, depending on whichever kind of suffering you want to suffer. But, man, you have to separate yourself from the good and the bad. Because what he's saying is in fact true, that your mind, peace, emotion, all part of the mind. And it can change at any given moment. So the second that you accept one, the other will creep in, and you will end up suffering again. Wow.
And this is not speculation. If you look at it, this is an accurate report of what's actually happening. Vedanta just brings it to your notice.
Yeah.
More we notice this, The more we stabilize ourselves in that witness consciousness, the more we are free of the ups and downs of the mind and the body and the world. Yeah. So that's where the whole purpose lies.
Going back to the 5 kleshas,
Yeah.
with this basis.
Yeah.
So, the 5 kleshas in Vedanta are
I thought he said glaciers. It sounded like he said glaciers and read glaciers was the 5 pleasures. Okay.
And yoga.
yoga, actually. Yeah, yoga. Not knowing the true nature of reality, grasping and clinging, that which is ungraspable, fear of impermanence, identifying with the ego, the fear of death. They're all connected, right?
Right.
So if we ask this question, what am I? Who am I? Go through the process, Neti Neti, Shankaracharya's
Right.
great hymn, and we get to this source, then all these things disappear in a sense, including the fear of death.
Right.
What, in your view, how should we explain death in
Right.
this scheme?
It's interesting.
What is
what,
death?
what is death in this scheme? Right. You remind me of this meeting I was in. I saw there's something called meetup these days.
Yeah.
And you see there's something called a philosopher's cafe. In that, philosophers get together in the New York Ethical Society, and they discuss the great questions of philosophy. And he said the 5 great unsolved questions of philosophy, we're going to discuss it in such and such day. So I turned up for that meeting because I was attracted. And what are the 5 great questions? If you Google it on Oxford University Press website, you will find the 5 great questions of unsolved questions of philosophy are, I'm telling you this because one of those questions is what Deepak asked, and 4 of the 5 are related directly to consciousness. The first question is, do we have free will? The second question they discussed was, what can we know, if anything at all? The question of epistemology and skepticism.
What are the limits of
Of knowledge, yes. And the third one is, straight away, what am I? Or who am I? That was the third question, which is the fundamental question in Vedanta. Then the 4th question was, what is death? And the 5th one was, what is justice? But the 4th question, what is death? The philosophers themselves said, we are not talking about death from the point of view of a doctor, which Deepak is an expert in and he knows. It's an interesting topic for a doctor too. But in this system, as a person, what is death to me? If I'm not the body, then what is death to me? In Vedanta, death is the passing away of this particular body you are embodied in.
this experience?
This particular experience, it stops because this body cannot support the jiva any longer. Maybe it's old, maybe it's damaged, so it dies. And the jiva moves on. The individual person moves on. And all of this is again an experience in consciousness. So in consciousness, birth and death of the body take place, which means you as consciousness, even you as jiva, you are not subject to death in that sense that you are not, that death is not the end of us.
That happens to the experience of body, mind, and the world that goes with it.
Right.
Which is a changing experience anyway.
Right.
But not to that which is the witnessing awareness in which that experience happens.
Absolutely. Let me make a point. It's a subtle point, but
Let me try to summarize that and let me know if I'm right or wrong, if you care to, and maybe hopefully I can maybe better say what they say, even though I'm terrible at speaking. So basically, all death is birth. Well, they didn't say anything about birth, but they say death is just the end of an experience. Your true self, your Brahman, your Atman, does not die. It merely, well, it doesn't necessarily move on because it's always a, well, Atman, they say, is the individual, which will go, well, in a sense, go back to Brahman. It's part of Brahman. God, that's the thing about Atman and Brahman with me. So basically, in the Jiva, which is the false identity of yourself, if I remember that correctly, will die. But then in some sense, if you get rebirth, you have a chance of remembering your past lives. So basically, death is merely the end of an experience for that body, but not the end of Atman.
very interesting. You know, when people say, how do you know a person exists after death? When the person is dead, obviously the body is dead and you burn it or you bury it or whatever, it's gone. So how do you know the person is also gone? But notice something, there's a very quick switch which has happened, which goes unnoticed. As long as I'm alive, when you say the person, by that I understand I, this entity called Sarva Priyananda, which is encased in this body. That's what I understand as the person, right? And death is understood as death of the body. But the moment the body is dead, the materialist will say, that person called Sarva Priyananda is gone. But you, at no point did you see this person called Sarva Priyananda disappearing. You saw the body dying and being burnt and or buried.
And at no point did you actually see a body that was a fixed entity as Sarva Priyananda, right?
That's another point. It's a stream of changes.
It's a stream, intermittent flow of sensations, images, feelings, thoughts that we call a body.
Yes, yes.
Right?
In fact, this lady, she told me in Santa Barbara, she's a nun there, she said, recently Swami was passing by a shop window and I saw my reflection in the window and I thought, who is this old lady? And I said, Swami, life went by so fast. I still think of myself as a 20-something.
Yeah, the I never changed, right?
Yes.
Only the experience of the I changed.
Yeah.
As this body, this mind, this experience of the world.
Right. So death from a Vedantic perspective or a yogic perspective is the moving on of the jiva from one non-functional body to another experience in maybe another body.
Okay, so that makes... But this jiva is still in fact Brahman or Atman, correct? Because Brahman is everything. The pure consciousness is everything. Again, that's the thing that I guess kind of gets me a little bit about how I was saying, you know, while this pen and myself are the same in terms of the karma as well, but somehow I am punished later on, like in my next life. I am punished for the things that I've done in my previous life. But why me when me is everyone? The pen is me and I am me, so why is the pen not suffering for my ill judgment? Or why aren't you suffering for my ill judgment? Maybe you are, I don't know. Why is someone who is not suffering from my ill judgment? Why? How does it get directly to me? How does it know that I am the one that needed the bad karma and not someone else? And the only way I can explain that is if I don't have it. Okay, kind of like the air. Perfect example. And in this air, there's bubbles of air, which is the Jivatman. I forgot where I was going with that. But anyways, actually I don't even know where I was going with that. Holy crap, I forgot. I was trying to look and think too much that I forget what I was going to make a point of. I think I was trying to prove how does, I guess, karma follow me? Basically, those bubbles somehow transfers the air to another bubble before it bursts. And that's how it knows. But these bubbles are not real because these bubbles within the air is not real. It is in fact just air also, and not real bubbles. And that's what makes Jivatman in a sense real, because of the bubbles, when in reality the bubbles are not there. We're all this big consciousness. So what happens in this particular part of the air affects all the air because of karma. I hope you understand what I'm saying, and let me know, how does that work? So far I understand they all believe in karma, and karma is passed down from this body, from the previous body to this body to the next body. But because of Brahman is everything, you are not an individual. Your karma affects everyone, because truly you are Brahman, you are Atman, you are everyone, so your karma affects everyone, not just you. Right?
So you started off by saying this is not philosophy, this is actually not even religion in a sense. It's not a system of thought, it's based on experience and knowledge directly. And that comes from, I would say, yoga, right? The word yoga implies union with the self.
I would, in fact, it's equally true to say that it's all of these. You can regard Vedanta as a philosophy, Advaita as a philosophy, and certainly it is taught in departments of philosophy in India. You can regard it as a system of thought, you can regard it as a religion, because it's actually the foundation of religion. I would look at it that way.
Religious experience.
Yeah, the foundation. But it's grounded in experience. All the time, it does not talk about a single thing which is different from what we experience all the time. So yes, a direct experience of this, what we are talking about, there are techniques in yoga which help us. But maybe we'll talk more about that.
No, we have 2 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes.
That's already like 1 minute and 55 seconds to spare after discussing.
Very quickly, Raj Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Gyan Yoga, Karma Yoga. And then we are done. We have everything done in less than an hour.
40 minutes.
Yes, and thanks to Deepak, he structured it so well. You would say, so what are the procedures? There are basically 4 major classes of practices. One class of practice is what you might call meditative practices. And there's a vast range. In the Rubin Museum itself, there have been exhibits and talks and demonstrations of various kinds of mostly Buddhist tradition practices. So there's a wide range of meditation practices. In Hinduism, you have the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, which is a classic manual of meditation. So that's one group. The other group is based on emotion and feeling, the Bhakti traditions. So that's called Bhakti Yoga. Love, yes. And then there's a third group of practices which seeks to convert our action, work, into spiritual practice. So what you might call, in a generic way, doing good to others, living unselfishly, living for a higher purpose. So all of that comes under karma yoga. How do I transform my action from a negativity, from a prison, into something that frees me, takes me to freedom? But the one which is a personal favorite, so I've saved it for the end, are the Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge, which are, like I just mentioned, the 3 stages, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, or the seer and the seen, Drigdrishya, or the method of the 5 sheets, the physical, the vital, the mental, the intellectual, and the causal sheet, and so the bliss sheet. So there are different, you might call them philosophical spiritual philosophies, sciences which are investigation directly based upon what you experience right now to lead you to that intuitive experience of I am that immortal pure consciousness. So yes, 4 yogas.
Verifiable.
Directly verifiable.
Directly verifiable.
Yes.
Okay, so that's Vedanta 101.
Okay, let's get out of that bright screen. Okay, so I actually kind of want to go over karma again a little bit. Okay, so in terms of duality and non-duality, karma makes sense to me in a duality's perspective, just because you are separate from everyone else, so when you get reborn, that separation from everyone else is easy to identify, and karma can pinpoint you as you go to the next bodies or get reincarnated. But in a non-duality, even though there's Jivatman, it doesn't mean anything because you are still Atman or Brahman. Jivatman just means that you do not, at least if I understand it correctly again, that it's this false understanding that you are an individual. Basically, false identity maybe, versus Atman, which is you identify your true self, which is everyone, everything. So, in terms of non-duality, how does karma work? Because even though they identify Jivatman, Jivatman is still false. That's not the real you. The real you is Brahman, Atman. One. The infinite. So karma would affect the infinite, the Atman, the Brahman, which is everyone. So if you as an individual do bad, you are in fact actually affecting everyone, not just yourself. Which would make sense to what Sadhguru was talking about, how when you realize that you're everyone, you don't want to cause harm to anyone because you are also harming yourself. And so therefore in karma, if you do bad, you are harming yourself because Atman, Brahman is, you are everyone, you are everything. Everything is you and you are everything. So how does that work? I can understand it in a dualistic point of view because you are separate from everyone else, therefore karma follows you. But in non-dualistic, you are everyone, and what you do because you are everyone will affect everyone. Whether you even seen them or talked to them, even if you haven't seen them or talked to them, you still affect them because karma, the laws of karma, follows that person, but because that person is Brahman, which is everyone, it affects everyone. Again, did I misunderstand it? If I did, let me know how I did. That way I can understand it better. Or did I just touch on something? Which would be remarkable, considering I'm sure people have thought about this. I just haven't found the answer yet. I haven't watched the answer. Anyways, that's the end of my reaction to Swami, Sarva Priyananda, and Deepak Chopra discussion of the Vedanta. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. Thumbs up, thumbs down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.